Hello and welcome to Mangatora 96, and today we have the review of One Piece chapter 1009, simply titled Hell. This week's chapter was action-packed, with the beginning of the chapter focusing on the fateful encounter between Orochi and the remaining 7 Akazaya samurai, which resulted in one of the most satisfying panels One Piece had to offer in recent times. But as much as this panel has a sweet taste, the bitter aftertaste must be mentioned, as it involves Orochi, who's a snake with many lives. The rest of the chapter focused on the fight on the roof, which had some great action scenes and above else a perfectly executed plan between the 5 supernovas, which resulted in the big cliffhanger of this week's chapter. Now let's save all that for later and start at the beginning of this week's chapter. One Piece had this week both the cover of the Shonen Jump magazine as well as the lead color page spread, and Oda continues with the contrast of those two covers which he began for chapter 1006, in which on the cover of Shonen Jump we had the 3 captains, while on the color spread we had Kaido and his core crew. A similar contrast is present also on this week's covers, although a bit tamer. On the cover of the magazine we have Luffy, who's surrounded by cherry blossom trees, as the cherry blossom season is in full swing in Japan right now. Meanwhile, on the color spread we have all the Straw Hats plus Tama putting hats on Jinzu statues to shelter them from the snow. From the background, this scene looks to play out somewhere in the Ringo region of Wano. Now moving into the contents of this week's chapter, we have a sudden encounter between Orochi and the Akazaya samurai. Meanwhile, Kaido's foot soldiers try to put out the fire that Orochi and Fukurokujo have caused. We see a pissed off Kinemon after seeing Orochi's ugly face. Meanwhile, Orochi is startled that he encountered the Akazaya samurai out of nowhere. While Fukurokujo tries to talk some sense into Orochi for him to leave and let Fukurokujo handle the samurai, Orochi ignores him completely, as he has another one of his brilliant ideas in which he believes that he can take on the samurai just because they are heavily injured, ignoring the fact of just how weak he actually is. I mean, if any of the Akazaya samurai would have just one arm and be on the verge of death, I will still put my money on the samurai rather than on Orochi in that fight. I mean seriously, probably the likes of Kuro, Creek and Arlong will be favorites in a one-on-one fight with Orochi. So I don't see any real reason other than Orochi is an ignorant idiot for trying and take on the samurai 1-on-7, regardlessly on how injured the samurai are. But before the fight begins, Orochi tries to put some salt on the samurai's wounds by talking about Kanjuro. Was Orochi maybe trying to shake the samurai's wills by talking about Kanjuro? I doubt that. He isn't that smart to try something like that. Orochi also compliments Denjiro/Kyoshiro for his actions and puts him on the same level of a duplicitous bastard like Kanjuro, which are seen on Denjiro's face. It doesn't sit well with him to be compared to Kanjuro. The talk ends while Orochi transforms into his Yamato no Orochi form to signal the epic battle between him and the remaining 7 Akazaya samurai. As the epic fight that will be remembered for years to come begins, it's already over, with the samurai casually slicing Orochi's heads off, which is one of the most satisfying panels in a long time. Seeing the samurai just casually slicing off Orochi's heads and seeing so many of Orochi's heads just flying off. And this would have been a really satisfying death for Orochi in my eyes, for him to be just so nonchalantly killed by Oden's samurai, just like that. But this is Orochi here we're talking about. So he is 99.9% still alive, which leaves a bit of a bitter aftertaste on this glorious panel, knowing that Orochi is more than likely still alive. Now the question here is, how many lives does Orochi actually have, as Kaido cut his head once. Now the Akazaya samurai cut, I would like to say all the 8 heads, but on the panel where his heads get cut off, I see 6 heads flying. In the middle panel, above the big double page spread panel, we see that Orochi has for sure 6 heads, maybe 7, but where the 7th head is, It's covered by a speech bubble and some fog, so it's hard to tell, but considering there are 7 of the samurai here, at the very least Orochi did have 7 heads. Now for you who are wondering if they really were 7 samurai, as it was shown that only Kiko, Kinemon, Kawamatsu, Denjiro and Raizo cut off Orochi's heads. Neko was shown on several panels to be present. As for Izo, he also was shown, but I wouldn't fault anyone for not noticing him as it's really tiny. But he is also here, so I don't see any reason why Neko and Izo wouldn't attack Orochi. Now how many lives has Orochi left with Kaido cutting 1 head and the samurai cutting for sure 6, but maybe all 8 heads. I don't know how many lives Orochi still has, and at this point it will be pointless to speculate as Orochi had so many of his heads cut off that it doesn't necessarily mean that Orochi has multiple lives for his heads, but it could just simply mean that you can't kill Orochi by cutting his head no matter how many times you cut it. Instead, if you really want him dead, you need to kill him some other way, like pierce his heart or drown him. But regardlessly, Orochi is more than likely coming back, as Fukurokujo didn't seem too bothered by Orochi losing his heads, and yet again we get a panel focusing on one of Orochi's severed heads like we did after Kaido cut it before. So to end this Orochi segment, he's probably alive, and I would really like if Oda turns this Orochi getting his head cut off by various characters into a running gag moving forward in this arc, as so many characters have grudges against Orochi, and it will be satisfying to see them cut his head off. As for us readers, I doubt that seeing Orochi get his head cut off frequently would get old. As the last scene of this segment of the chapter, the samurai move ahead to help Momo, but Raizo stays behind to fight his rival Fukurokujo one-on-one. Now it really seems like all the samurai will get their one-on-ones. As for the Raizo vs Fukurokujo, it will be interesting to see the 2 top ninjas of Wano fighting each other. Now moving on to the rooftop, we see the 5 supernovas have agreed on a plan on how to tear the 2 Yonkos apart, but what's also important in their conversation is that Law confirms that if you have a ridiculous amount of haki, like the Yonkos have, he can't do anything with his room, which is a confirmation on the speculation the fandom had on why Law just doesn't cut the Yonkos in his room and calls it a day. In those conversations, haki was always an option on why Law can't do those crazy things like he did in Punk Hazard, and now it confirmed that yes, indeed, if your haki is strong enough, you're pretty much immune to most of Law's abilities in his room. But before they can act on their plan, Big Mom and Kaido interrupt that meeting by using a combo attack. I must say I didn't think that those two would ever use a combo attack together, but they did, and it's massive. The one who goes to immediately block this massive attack is Zoro. After reading this chapter the first time around, I had the impression that Zoro did actually tank this massive combined attack of both Big Mom and Kaido, and afterwards was fine enough to continue fighting, which at first struck me as this isn't right. Zoro shouldn't be strong enough to tank a combo attack of 2 Yonkos and then get up and continue fighting. But luckily this was just me not reading closely the first time around, as I didn't notice that Zoro didn't actually tank that attack, but rather by blocking this attack for a second or two, which he needed to give everything he had to block this attack for even a few seconds. This gave Law the opportunity to move the 5 of them using his room to evade the brunt of the attack, which is good as I don't believe that any one of those 5s would be getting up if they would have taken this attack head on. Then we see the first hint of Kaido using observation haki in this series so far, if I'm not mistaken, by him noticing that the 5 supernovas are still alive. Meanwhile, Luffy storms right back at Kaido. You might say that Luffy is just ignoring the plan once again, as he's going headfirst through the wall. But that's not the case here, as Luffy's reckless attack on Kaido creates the perfect opportunity for the other 4 to execute the plan. Luffy uses Red Hawk, on which Kaido dodges this attack which is the first time that Kaido willingly dodged an attack. Yes, he did also dodge Zoro's attack, but he only did it after Big Mom warned him that he needs to dodge. While here, he dodged because he acknowledged Luffy's strength. Luffy doesn't miss this opportunity and rubs this into Kaido's face, on which Kaido doesn't take too kindly, as he immediately sends Luffy flying with his Kanabo. Then Kaido proceeds to do something interesting, and that is that he can turn his lower half of the body into that of a dragon to move faster and fly. Something like this wasn't shown that a zone user could do in his hybrid form before in the series, in which that a zone user could turn one part of his body into the full animal transformation while still being in the hybrid form. But you could also say that Kaido can do this because he is a mythical zone rather than a normal, so maybe that's the reason. It's also shown that Kaido can use his breath attacks in his hybrid form, but they are smaller in scale compared to his full dragon form. Kaido does manage to land a pretty big hit on Luffy using his Kanabo, but all the while Kaido is busy dealing with Luffy, the other four can commence the operation Bring the Whale Back into the Ocean. Kid finishes constructing a box made out of metal using his Dial Fruit. Meanwhile, Law uses his room. At the beginning, Law said that he can't do anything to the Yonkos using his room as they have such strong haki, but that doesn't apply to Big Mom's homies, as Law uses his room to trap Zeus in the metal box that Kid made. Meanwhile, Zoro goes to attack Prometheus while Killer attacks Napoleon. Zoro, using the Foxfire style, keeps Prometheus in check by cutting him repeatedly into pieces. All the while, Killer is barraging slashes on Napoleon, who tries to get away from Killer. This way, they have successfully separated the homies from Big Mom. This opportunity uses Kid, who attacks Big Mom in order to get her attention. Predictably, his attack does 0 damage to Big Mom, who then proceeds to punch Kid into the ground. But that was all a part of the plan. Kid uses his prosthetic metal arm to repel Big Mom into the air using his Dial Fruit, which was the plan all along for having Big Mom in the air without her homies, and with Kaido being busy dealing with Luffy, everything comes together. Now the only thing left is for Law using his room to crash a giant boulder into Big Mom, who's in mid-air without her homies, which he does. The attack, like Kid's, did 0 damage to Big Mom, but what it did accomplish is to throw her off Onigashima, and with Zeus captured, Prometheus having his hands full with Zoro, Killer constantly attacking Napoleon, and Kaido dealing with Luffy, leaves Big Mom to helplessly fall into the ocean. And with Big Mom falling and the seemingly perfect execution of the plan, we end this chapter. Now, will Big Mom really fall to her death? I doubt it. Now the question remains, who or what could save her? My first option is Prometheus, as we see Zoro coughing up blood in the second to last panel of this chapter, which to me indicates that he isn't fine after blocking the combo attack of Big Mom and Kaido for a few seconds. This could give Prometheus the opportunity to get away from Zoro and go save Big Mom. My second option is Kaido, who should be able to get away from Luffy and go save his so-called big sister if he really wanted to. But here the question is if Kaido really wants to save Big Mom. And my last option I could see happening is that Big Mom lands directly on her ship, as the rest of her crew are still around Wano and some time has passed, so for them to come up again isn't impossible. Ultimately, I don't believe that Big Mom will die this way, and those are the 3 options that I see happening in order to prevent Big Mom's death. Well, we will see next week if I was right with one of those predictions, or Oda could choose something completely different. All in all, this was a great chapter of One Piece, with some great action, some satisfying moments, and it left us with something to speculate for the next week. And that will be all for this video. If you like this video, leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comments below, or subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content as well as other manga content, and until next time, take care.